And let me now bring in Congressman Glenn Ivey, a Democrat from Maryland and a member of the House Ethics Committee. Thank you so much, Congressman, for being here. So Gaetz is no longer in consideration for Attorney General. What was your reaction to this withdrawal, and what happens now to that Ethics Committee report that you and your colleagues have been working on?
Well, the withdrawal surprised me almost as much as the initial selection. And there have been a lot of surprises in between too. So it's been an interesting tale. As far as what comes next, I'm not sure, frankly. As your commentators just alluded to a moment ago, there is the potential that he could change his mind about not pursuing the congressional seat that he was elected or reelected to. There are also other possibilities. If Marco Rubio is selected for the cabinet and confirmed, it may be that he could be named to fill out that term. I've also seen speculation that he might run for governor in 2026 in Florida. So I don't really know what's up next for him. I guess we'll just have to see.
When you talk about what all those positions, those elected official positions that could be up next, do you think the public then still deserves to see this ethics report? And will you push to make it public?
Well, the House Ethics Committee does have precedent for releasing reports even after a member of Congress has resigned and left office. And I know that there may be some scenarios where that was done in part because the individual was considering seeking additional office or running for office. I want to say that was the Bonner case. I want to say that was around 1987, if I recall correctly. So I think that's still a possibility.
Yeah.
How the committee will, or if the committee will consider that, I'm not sure, but I think we'll have to see. But as far as I know, the December 5th meeting is still on the books, and we'll see how it goes.
I guess I want to go back to, do you think you yourself will be out there saying we should publish this report? And do you think the full House should also take up this matter?
Well, I think it contains information that the public should have, especially if he does decide to pursue additional office, whether it's the congressional seat, a Senate seat, a gubernatorial seat, a different kind of appointment to the Trump administration. I think the public should see that information. And I know in some other prior occasions, the fact that, the potentially material that could be relevant to larger debates about how we pursue cases, whether it's at the Ethics Committee level, the Department of Justice, there might be some light to shed on that too. I can't go into details there, but that's another consideration. I'm sorry, what was your other question?
No, that was the question. And I think when you talk about the fact that you can't go into too much detail, there was this sort of public tensions that we saw between House Committee ethics members. What have the last few days been like inside that committee?
Yeah, I can't really talk about the internal deliberations, but I think you've seen some of the external statements that have been made after those meetings by the chairman, Mr. Guest, and the ranking member, Ms. Wild. And, there were some, tense exchanges there. So, but, that can come with the territory. I think, these are matters that can sometimes raise strong feelings. But our ethics committee has had a good record of working together, back to the Santos investigation, for example. And I hope that we'll be able to do that in the future moving forward.
Yeah. Another thing that's interesting is that Matt Gaetz was already the subject of a House investigation when Donald Trump chose him. I wonder, do you think that given now that he's not subject to this, that it makes it possibly easier for other controversial picks to get through because now he's sort of maybe even seen as the sacrificial lamb of all this?
I don't know. I think it does shift the spotlight, though, to other nominees. Gaetz was sucking up the oxygen with respect to the nominee for Department of Defense and Tulsi Gabbard, for the national security post. I think they'll get more scrutiny now than they were, while his nomination was pending.
Yeah. And
that's probably rightly so. I think they both have very, questionable things in their backgrounds that the Senate and certainly the public should consider carefully before they elevate either of them to those kinds of positions. And there's other nominees too that President-elect Trump has sent up that are kind of head scratchers, frankly. So I think we'll just have to see how that plays out. But it's clear that he's not having a strong and thorough vetting process before he makes some of these selections. And so I think that makes it even more incumbent on the Senate and the public to pay close attention and, do the vetting for him.
Yeah. Well, I also want to ask you about what happens in January when President-elect Trump takes office. Republicans will have this razor-thin majority, but a majority nonetheless. That being said, I wonder how you and other House Democrats plan to govern in the minority.
Well, we'll probably do more of the same. We're in the minority now, and, our leader, Hakeem Jeffries, has done an outstanding job of managing us and keeping us unified and working together and moving together. And we've had great strength in our solidarity there. So we'll have to see. But, in this current Congress, the stuff that really had to get done was based on the leadership of Hakeem Jeffries, whether that was keeping the government open, which we've done on a couple of occasions, making sure the United States pays its debts and doesn't default on those. That was Hakeem Jeffries' leadership that made those happen. And, we'll continue to work with the Republicans where we can and maintain our principles. But if they're going to cross lines and support the types of things that we've seen so far, or potentially Project 2025 proposals, we'll stand against those and fight those.
Yeah, and you say it really interesting, and you talk about the idea that you made sure that things that needed to get done got done. So with that said, do you see a scenario where Democrats will help Republicans if legislation stalls?
We've already done that. And, those two examples I cited, but there have been others too.
Yeah.
But, I think the key is not so much are we going to bail out the Republicans, but what are we going to do to make sure that the American public gets what it needs done by the government. And we're definitely willing to make sure that those things happen. We'll stand to make sure that, the government moves forward, that we get the things done that the American people need.
Well, Congressman Glenn Ivey, I really, really appreciate you coming on a newsy Thursday.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.